With this. Let's just explain to me what intermittent fasting is, and maybe a little bit of the history, of kind of like maybe how it started out, but what it really is today and what people should know about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, fasting's been going on for a lot longer than we've been around, and a lot of major religions have been using fasting. That's how I sort of knew about it in the first place. But I mean, simply put, fasting is just abstaining from food for a certain period of time, and this could be done in different feeding windows or in fasting windows. And so, like the most popular, probably that most people know, is like the 16-8 window where they're fasted for 16 hours, and then they have an 8-hour eating window. So I mean, that's sort of the simple put reason for fasting. I think a lot of people overcomplicate it.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Another amazing guest today. Great topic. We're going to be talking about intermittent fasting, and I have an expert on today. His name is Brian Gryn. And what makes him an expert is, first and foremost, he's been in this field for many, many years. He is a coach. He's been coaching people. He'll talk to you about that experience and maybe the number of people he's coached. He's also an author. He's written an amazing book about intermittent fasting, which has gotten a lot of attention. And I mean, overall, he's just a passionate person, believes deeply in intermittent fasting and the benefits that it has. And what we're going to do today is we're going to debunk the 6 myths about intermittent fasting, but we're going to do that at the end of the show. Before that, we're going to hear from Brian about all sorts of positives when it comes to intermittent fasting. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for having me on. Excited.
This is going to be fun. Like I said to you off camera, I've been intermittent fasting for, I don't even know, 5-6 years. It's been a long time. It's just a lifestyle for me. And I think as you begin to talk about it and our conversation unfolds, that conversation in and of itself of diet versus lifestyle is going to be something we're going to dive into. So, but listen, thanks for being on, and let's just jump right into it, man. Sounds good?
Great. Yeah.
All right. So I know I gave an intro, but I'm sure you'll do a way better job than me talking about you. Maybe just give us a background, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've been in health and wellness for like 20 years now. I was originally in corporate America. It wasn't for me, and started studying about nutrition, wellness, strength training, and that was my sort of first avenue, was strength training, helping individuals, just general public, get stronger, and started to realize that, well, maybe I should look into nutrition a little bit more, because it's a big piece to the puzzle. And so, yeah, I've been doing it ever since, out of school. And gosh, so yeah, it's been 20 years now, and just passionate about it. I've, been able to help people both like in the studio and out. I do more so now consulting, helping middle-aged men, I would say 45 plus. Just
me.
Either, yeah, right. That's me too. I'm 42. I mean, so helping individuals, either get their body back to what it once was, or just work on overall general health and wellness, because it gets a little bit more difficult as we age. And so that's just sort of my background. I mean, I wrote a fasting journal. I have another book coming out in January, and so yeah, I just love, just passionate about like health and wellness. So that's a bit about myself.
I love your dog in the back. Tell me about your dog. No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
yeah, right.
So your dog's only eating in a 4-hour window.
Well, right now they're supposed to be eating, but they'll be eating right after the show. So they do some fasting, here and there.
So let's start off with this. Let's just explain to me what intermittent fasting is, and maybe a little bit of the history, of kind of like maybe how it started out, but what it really is today and what people should know about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, fasting's been going on for a lot longer than we've been around, and a lot of major religions have been using fasting. That's how I sort of knew about it in the first place. But I mean, simply put, fasting is just abstaining from food for a certain period of time, and this could be done in different feeding windows or in fasting windows. And so, like the most popular, probably that most people know, is like the 16-8 window, where they're fasted for 16 hours, and then they have an 8-hour eating window. So, I mean, that's sort of the simple put reason for fasting. I think a lot of people overcomplicate it, but abstaining from calories is probably the easiest way to just make it black and white and understand, what breaks a fast and what doesn't.
That's an interesting way to put it, right? Because if there's calories, then it's food. You're breaking the fast. If there's sugar, if there's anything, like, you're breaking the fast.
Technically, yes. Black coffee technically doesn't have calories, so you could use black coffee and teas. But I don't think you have to be so dogmatic about it. And I think that especially starting out, if you do want to maybe fast for a little bit, using those as almost like training wheels. I know people put cream in their coffee and things like that, and butter and MCT oil, and there's a lot of different ways that people. Granted, those are fats, so they are going to break the fast technically, but they might help people out, especially early on, if they're trying to just fast for a period of time.
It's funny because I tried everything you've just said. I tried the MCT oil, but in the end, and I said to you off camera, like, I think I discovered it like 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't want to spoil everything you're going to say, but I will tell you it changed my life in terms of the way that I feel every day. And I will say that from my own experience, that you get used to it I got used to it very quickly, and I can't even imagine living a lifestyle different than living in an intermittent fasting way. And it's not a diet. It has nothing to do with a diet. It's just it's the timing, as you say, of the 16-8 or 17-7 or whatever you're going to do, or one meal a day, whatever you're going to do. It's just not feeding outside of those time frames.
Yeah.
And so
I was just going to say, it gives you boundaries. And I think that's
right.
like one of the biggest benefits of intermittent fasting. It's, I think a lot of times, it's easy now to get a meal in about 2 minutes on your phone, ordered, delivered. And, a lot of times for most people, the kitchen's open all day long. So I think most importantly, it gives you boundaries. And I will say this, just the simplicity of it and the flexibility of it, that if you're traveling or doing something and you're on a plane, you don't want to eat their food, you're used to that. You're able to do that, as opposed to just sort of being so stuck on when you're eating and being tied down by the clock and by just your hunger hormones and food in general.
Some people might be saying, well, why would I even want to intermittent fast? Like, why would I not want to eat during 16 hours of the day? So what are the main reasons that somebody would want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, there's my dog.
It makes the show real.
Exactly. Well, I will say this: they've been in a fasted state for a bit. I'm going to feed them when we're done, but he just turned the heat on. Anyways, I'm sorry. So your question was why? Well, I mean, here's the thing: there's a lot of studies around fasting, mainly on animal models, right? I think one of the biggest things that fasting can bring to individuals is actually gut relief, because when you're eating all day, you have to digest that food. You might be inefficient at digesting that food, and you might be eating other stressors that are harming your gut. And we all know that how important gut health is. So I would say probably that's one of the biggest bonuses of fasting is gut relief, gut health. Obviously, it can help lower insulin and blood sugar levels, and improve mental clarity, as you mentioned already. And there's some studies around, even increasing growth hormone. I mean, obviously, when you're in a fasted state, you're going to have sort of this acute alertness, as if, like back in the hunter-gatherer days when we didn't have food and we had to find our next hunt. Obviously, that kicks in. Your stress hormones do kick in, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as well as we go. But there are some science around like autophagy, which is like a cell cleanse as well. Your body automatically does that during your overnight fast, but cell cleansing is another one. So so those are, I would just say, some of the top level ones.
Yeah, and that's great, man. I mean, I'm just making some notes while you're talking. Gut relief for sure. Insulin, I can tell you that's one of the main reasons I began doing it, just because as I was starting to get older, I'm about to be 50 in a few weeks, but as I work out a lot, but I did it to try and keep my my body fat percentage, like where I wanted it. And my understanding is that when your body's producing insulin, you're storing fat. When your body's not producing insulin, you're burning fat. And so intermittent fasting is the easiest way to pretty much drop your body fat. And while you're at it, oh, by the way, increase your human growth hormone, your HGH, autophagy, which I think kicks in around 15 or 16 hours, right? Like when it really kicks in.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a black and white sort of like, oh, after 15 hours, I think it's one of those things where it sort of depends on the individual. And I think, autophagy is something that it's tough to measure. But yes, I mean, obviously, yeah, if you're in a lower insulin state, you can get into your stores of body fat and use that for energy, which, can be useful.
For sure. You didn't mention sleep. Is that a factor? In terms of does intermittent fasting have any impact on sleeping better?
I think so, in the sense that, providing, not eating too close to bedtime, right, can really help with sleep, right? Because you're not digesting those foods. So that's probably like one of the first things I start out with people is like, let's pick a time to cut off the eating window. And let's just say that's at 7 p.m. Well, that gives you, let's say you go to bed at 10, that gives you 3 hours to digest. So also obviously can help with indigestion and GERD and things like that, but can definitely help with, improving sleep quality as well.
You know what? It's interesting. I'm sure you have the same experience. So I go to the gym around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I stop eating usually like by 6 at night. So I'm already 13 hours in. And that last 3 or 4 hours I want to get, first of all, when I'm at the gym, I'm not hungry. I might be physically, my body might think it's hungry, but my energy levels are insane. Every morning I wake up with energy, but when I'm at the gym, anybody I'll mention to, like, oh, I haven't eaten yet, if it comes up in conversation, how could you do that? It's the best thing ever. I don't even want to eat. So the workouts, it really wouldn't be true. I mean, I've proven to myself, I can't say it's true for anybody else, but the workouts are unbelievable, has no impact on my ability to work out. At a certain point, yeah, if I fasted until, and I'm in like hour 18 or 19 and tried to go to the gym, I haven't gone that far, so I don't know what that feels like, but I can tell you an hour 14, 15, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's a common question. Should I eat before I work out? First of all, I think it depends on your goals, right? If you're, getting into muscle building and you really want to, like, let's just say you really want to go from like a small sort of stature into and really put on muscle, I would probably say that, yeah, you might need to have a little something before the workout and you're doing this 2-hour grueling strength training session. But I would say for most people, I think it just comes down to personal preference and how you feel about it. I've done both. I think there's pros and cons either way. But yeah, like you said, you don't necessarily need to do it. It's something that you've gotten used to.
Yeah, and by the way, if I'm going to do it like a really hardcore workout where I usually, then I'll wait till I break the fast. I'll have my meal, then I'll wait an hour or two, then I'll go do that like really crazy workout. But
Yeah,
I think it's something that people should think about, where your lifestyle becomes like that schedule. It's not that complicated. Like, it shouldn't be a big, like, oh wow, I gotta set myself up, and it's this massive change. It's a change, but as you mentioned before, if you start to ease yourself into it, you
right.
sort of find yourself there one day. And that's how I started. Just kind of started to shrink the window, stop eating after 7. Just by stopping eating after 7, you go to sleep, you wake up, you're already 12 hours in.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Right there, you've done it. I mean, I think maybe even before you do something like that, if you want to just say, you know what, I want to have 3 or maybe even 4 meals, whatever, depending on the individual. Say you have 3 meals, just don't snack. Right? Just stop
It's that
snacking.
simple. Just
Yeah.
don't snack. I mean, it's
Just
simple
don't.
for us to say. It's so easy when you're snacking, but it is that simple. Just don't snack. And to not snack, maybe just occupy your mind with something else. Like, you might think you're hungry, but maybe you just need to sip on some water.
Right. I mean, water, black coffee, black tea, or I'm sorry, black coffee, tea, those are good. Sparkling water is great, in between, and so, yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it is in the mind. And if you can find ways to stay busy, I think that makes it easier.
So you listed a lot of reasons that are good. There's benefits, like all these benefits to intermittent fasting. Is there any real truth to when you hear people say, that's not good for you? It's not good to fast. Is there any real like truth or any data that says it's bad for you or harmful to you?
Yeah, so there are there, and I'll just say this. I think it's context dependent. I think it depends on the individual, where they've been at, where they're going, like what are their health goals. Because I'll just use myself as an example. I've been doing fasting on, for, I shouldn't say on and off, for quite a while. I would say 7-8 years. And over the last, I don't know, six months or so, I've done some blood work, noticed thyroid hormone maybe came down a little bit. So
Is that good or bad?
That's not so good.
Okay.
But not bad. I wasn't like in the basement, like bad, like totally in realm of where you should be. But when I look at my blood work, I look for optimal, right? We want optimal, right? So I'm not in it for just to be in the general realm of decent, So one of the things that fasting does is it increases stress hormones. Okay. And when you increase stress hormones, sometimes you downregulate other activity and processes that go on. And some of that downregulation could be production of thyroid hormones and even like reproductive hormones, right? So sometimes the conversion of what's called your inactive thyroid hormone, which is your T4, to the active thyroid, the T3, sometimes it can sort of downregulate that. Now, this is something that I would say I've looked into over the last 6 to 8 months. And so what I've done as sort of a self-experimentation is I've actually added in back a meal for myself, just to see how it would impact my blood. So I'm not just sort of going blind into this. This is something more of a self-experimentation. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. And I would also say this is, as you get older, obviously yourself turning 50, one thing you do want to do is you want to preserve muscle mass, right? And so fasting, even though I think you would have to really abuse it, it can somewhat cause a little bit of a decrease in muscle mass, or you might not quite get the results you would want if you had 3 or 4 protein meals throughout the day, as opposed to just having 1 or 2. And as you get older, maintaining muscle mass, avoiding sarcopenia is very important, right?
Avoiding what?
Sarcopenia is just loss of muscle.
Loss of muscle. Okay.
Yeah. So
listen, I'm a simple guy. You gotta give me definitions.
yeah. No, I hear you. So what I'll just say is, fasting is a stressor, working out is a stressor, going in the cold is a stressor, calorie restriction is a stressor. These things can add up over time. So some people can handle them better than others. But what I'll say is, if you're doing something for a long period of time, let's say you're just restricting calories for a long period of time, that's not so good pro-metabolically, right? So you hear a lot of times with like even bodybuilders, I mean, they, when they're going into competitions, it's not so great for their body what they're doing to it, because they're restricting a lot, and then they build back up. But you just want to keep an eye on that. So I guess that's my point is if as long as you're doing blood work and you're keeping an eye on that. I mean, I still do fasting. I've just opened my window a little bit, right? I still stop eating I'm done eating by 6:30 p.m., I'd say, but I just opened it up and I'm just sort of doing a bit of self-experimentation. So I think that's important just to keep in mind, especially if you've been doing it for a long time.
That point about blood work is actually, it's pretty important. And I go once a quarter. I go every 3 months, and I actually go for the same reason that you said. It's really just to make sure that everything is optimal, and I work with a nutritionist. And it is interesting that we oftentimes talk about the T's that you just mentioned, those thyroid markers.
Testosterone.
No, the one you said,
T4, T3.
T4.
Right, but another big T is testosterone, right?
It's an important one.
Yeah, that's an important one. So, but yeah, going back to, I think that people just need to keep an eye on that. I don't even need, I would say every 3 months might even be, you don't even need to do that, but at least a couple times a year, just so you have sort of a baseline and see where you're at.
As you're talking, I actually opened up my blood work. I'm scrolling through looking for I can't find it. I was curious what it was.
Okay. Yeah. It's just something to keep an eye on. It's not, it's it's obviously your thyroid runs like everything in your body, right? So we
For
just
sure.
want to keep an eye on that.
Let me get you back on this. There you are. It's interesting that, I mean, in the end, I'm not hearing that it's unhealthy. I'm hearing that you should keep an eye on it. If you're doing it, there's way more benefits than there are potential downsides to it.
Yeah.
And the downsides aren't things that are necessarily harmful. You may just need to be aware. Hey, let me get a blood test once in a while. Make sure maybe it's a supplement. Maybe there's something you need to do to offset maybe something it's causing, but those don't outweigh all of these benefits. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I would agree. I mean, we live in a society now where we're just of abundance, right? Where we can get anything, and so we have this overindulgence of everything, right? So a little bit of fasting, hey, I think can do most people good. Like I said, I would just bring that perspective in because I think it's something that I've come about over the last 6 months for my own experimentation. And I think people just should keep an eye on it if they're, because you can overdo working out, right? You can over exercise and not get enough recovery. As you know, we're 40s, 50s, you got to value recovery as much as you value the workout.
I hate to think wow, I'm 49, about to be 50, and I feel like actually better than ever. But it is true. As much as I don't want to say it's the cause, and I don't know it's the cause, but I do notice that, sometimes I need a day or two where I'm just my body's telling me to take a break,
right,
from the gym, and even with the fasting, sometimes I'll just skip a day or two.
Yeah,
and just because I can feel it, it's I just need a break. Maybe it is because I'm getting older,
Hey, you know what? Yeah, you definitely keep. I think that's most. They have all these wearables. These wearable devices, the Whoop, the Aura Ring. There you go. And it's great to a point, but I think, like you said, sometimes you just got to listen to yourself, right? and that, I think that's important.
All right, I want to show you something. So I have this app I use, which is called Fast Tick.
Okay.
Wait, where is it? Nope. It's too blurry.
It's tough to see.
It's an app I use to keep track of when I start, when I stop, and every so often I'll look at it and be like, "Oh, I'm kind of hungry. Oh, no, I got 3 more hours left. Let me go keep myself busy." I find that to be just a helpful tool.
Yeah.
But the basic thing is I have to tell it, hey, I'm doing 18.6 to 17.7, 18. Forget the math.
18.6.
So which one is there? One that works best for everybody?
No, I think that you want to make sure your window is big enough that you can, get in the nutrition you need to get in, right? Because if you do it for a long period if you start doing fasting for a long period of time, weeks, months, years, right, and you make it a lifestyle change, which is fine, you got to make sure you're also not just restricting calories at the same time too, right? You got to make sure you're getting in enough food during your eating window. So if it's too short, the one meal a day, I've done that. I think I'm not a huge fan, especially for middle-aged men and women, and just the importance of just getting in enough calories in general, but also getting enough protein. We don't want to have our bodies break down our own muscles and organs and other tissues to supply these amino acids that you need to get from protein. So there's not a perfect window. I think you got to find one that fits best for your lifestyle, but also just make sure that it's not too restrictive. That'd be mine.
It's funny. I've tried the 1 meal a day, other than being really busy, and it just sort of happens occasionally.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel right, and I know that there's people out there that will push that. I follow a guy who's I think is brilliant, named Dr. Berg. I'm not sure if you ever watched his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So much content, and it's just a lot on that topic. But I think what you're saying to me makes more sense. You got to get those calories in, and you got to get the nutrients in, and so maybe a 1 meal a day for some specific reason. If you're trying to have some outcome in a day or two, maybe lose some, I don't know, water or body. I don't know what would happen, but you can't live like that. It doesn't seem reasonable,
Yeah, I mean, people are doing it. I think it depends, like you mentioned, on the individual. But I would say for the majority of people, I think at least getting in 2 solid meals and breaking it up and giving your body some time to digest. Because I think sometimes when you pack it into one, it just feels, I don't know about you, because
Oh,
I've done, yeah, it just feels like you're almost like rushing to get all your food in, and who wants to feel like that? So,
even the 2 meals a day, like, I've been like,
yeah.
"How the heck can I eat enough food in 2 meals?"
Yeah, I was the same way. And you could get 3 in, right? You could do 3 in, that's fine. I mean, I don't think, I guess I think it depends on your goals and what you've done in the past, but yeah.
I guess it also depends on your caloric needs. I go to the gym every day. Like, I need
Yeah.
energy. I need the calories. If you're somebody who doesn't exercise, which is a different show, we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe your needs are so much less that you could have 1 meal a day. I guess, or 2 meals that are smaller and you'd be fine. But I mean, for I think a guy like me or you, like 2 meals a day is still pushing it.
I agree. I
You
agree.
know?
Yeah, because I backed off a little bit. Now I have 3, so
Yeah,
I
you
went,
feel
yeah.
better, right?
Yeah, no, it's been good. Actually, I just got a DEXA scan. I
Oh,
mean,
you
I put
did?
on, yeah, what's that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the thing
DEXA
that tells
scan,
you your body composition, right?
yeah, DEXA
Yeah, yeah,
scans are great. You could do those every, maybe 4 to 6 months. And I knew it. I put on body fat percentage, which was fine. I went up a little bit, which I knew it, just from looking at myself. And I put on like 8, 10 pounds, but I also
yeah.
put on 5 pounds of muscle. So, and I have no visceral fat. So all is well.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not luck. You're doing intermittent fasting. You're living the lifestyle.
I think it's a combination of things. But yeah, it's important to just, to keep an eye on. I think doing a DEXA and doing blood work is a great way to go.
Yeah. So there's not sorry, there's not really one set time window that works for everyone, but it definitely is something where if one were interested in doing this, that they have options and you would say they
Yeah,
should find what works best for them, but have a goal where they do want to get to. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. I mean, I think that first of all, I would say, especially in the United States, we value dinner with our families for the most part. I would say so. That's a meal you're not going to want to cut. But like, breakfast a lot of time is I think a lot of people that are getting benefits from fasting, they're getting rid of breakfast where they probably had some type of processed carbohydrate like a croissant, bagel, or donut in the morning. and
Oh,
and and so like, I think that's part of the relief from fasting is the fact that they're just eliminating these toxins that they're putting in their
toxic food.
bodies. Yeah. So
It's so bad for you.
yeah. So
Sugar.
that's the thing. I would say maybe pick the meal or the time of day where you feel like you're rushed or you feel like you eat your worst like type of foods, and maybe eliminate that one. And yes, I think there's no hard and fast rule. I think just don't eat too close to bedtime, and other than that, everything else is fine.
I mean, you kind of touched on this, but I want to talk a little bit more about muscle loss. Should somebody expect to lose muscle if they start intermittent fasting? Let's just say they do a typical 16-8. You fast for 16 hours, you're eating for 8. Should you expect to lose muscle?
Probably not. Probably not. I think for most people, unless they're like getting into bodybuilding competitions, or they're going to train for some type of amateur competition. I think no. I mean, they might lose a little bit, if they were used to eating 4 meals a day and getting 4 spikes of what's called muscle protein synthesis, which is just way for your body to use protein to build muscle. Um, so I think as long as the meals that you're getting in, are nutrient dense meals, and you're lifting weights, I don't think you're going to really lose muscle. I mean, I've been fasting for a while now. I don't feel like I've lost muscle. So unless let's say you're doing 1 meal a day, you're not getting enough protein, this or that, you're probably doing a little bit of breakdown of muscle, and that's probably going to happen. So
I agree with you. I haven't experienced any muscle loss. I mean, granted, I go to the gym, 5 days a week and I'm lifting weights, but still, I haven't experienced any muscle loss. So maybe it sounds like you're saying if somebody's concerned about that, could do something like add protein to your diet, even if it's just a protein shake, if you're
yeah,
concerned that you're going to lose muscle.
no doubt about it. And they could do that. Yeah, they could do it maybe pre-workout, post-workout, whatever, especially if they're on the go, or they could do it in the morning, if adding in some type of, I think it's always better to eat food. I'm not like advocating protein shakes all the time. I like to have them from time to time. I think I enjoy them and whatever, but like, yeah, so it's an easy, quick, convenient way of doing things. But yes, if you feel like you're just like Yeah, you're losing muscle, which, only it's tough tough for other people to see, but you might see on yourself. Then, maybe it might be time to add in
Yeah.
some protein. Yeah.
You mentioned before an increase in HGH, which is human growth hormone. Does that play into somebody? So if you start intermittent fasting and over time your body is releasing more HGH, does that have any impact on muscle?
Well, it can, but I think the studies, for the most part, with the human growth hormone, has mainly been in the short term. So I wouldn't, I don't think that's like a huge ongoing benefit is increase in human growth hormone. Um, but one of the things is when you're fasting, right, you reduce insulin, but you're increasing your stress hormones, noradrenaline, cortisol, and growth hormone do go up. But so it's sort of these counter-regulatory hormones. So I guess my thing is, I think a lot of the studies have been done more in the short term, but these counter-regulatory hormones do increase during fasting periods.
And what's the impact of those things increasing?
Well, like you mentioned, alertness, energy, right? If your noradrenaline's going up and your cortisol, your stress hormones up, it's a little bit of a flight or flight. That's why I said that, like, you can overdo fasting, right? Because it is a stressor, and you are increasing these kind of regulatory hormones. So I think if you overdo it, then that might not be such a good thing. But in the short term, it's fine.
So there's so much. It's like a chemistry lesson. Like you really,
Yeah.
you got to know so much about chemistry. And you know what? If any, and if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, "Oh my God, this is so complicated," at the end of the day, just the takeaway from up to this point is it's pretty good, it's pretty healthy. There's no real downside, and you'll probably feel better. But that leads me into my next question, because when somebody first starts intermittent fasting, how should they expect to feel those maybe the first few days or first week?
Whew. Well, it depends on what they've done, because if they start doing fasting, they might not feel that great early on. They're going to maybe get headaches and gosh, I mean, you hear about, like, people who also, like, the keto flu, where
Right.
they just feel like crap. I think keep an eye on, if you're starting fasting, what I would just say is make sure that you're getting in some type of, like, minerals, right? Because what happens is sometimes when people fast and they're eliminating these processed foods, well, these processed foods have sodium and have actually minerals in them. Not to say that processed food is good for you, but they're used to
Let's be
having
clear about that.
like sodium, and sodium is
Right.
actually important, right? You're sweating a lot, and like, I just had Rob Wolf on, has a company, actually. It's called Element, and they make these little sodium electrolyte packets. And I think it's important to keep an eye on your electrolyte levels, especially if you start fasting, but even in general, because a lot of times you're cutting out a lot of things that are giving you sodium, and sort of helping you balance out. So yes, to answer your question, they might not feel great. I think, like you said, and we talked about it earlier, step ladder approach, ease into it, especially if you're coming from a standard American diet, you've never done any fasting in your life.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the salt and things. I keep a thing of water with me, but once a day, usually the first one, I always add electrolyte powder in there.
Okay.
And I
Yeah,
can tell you, I can feel a difference almost like immediately. Like I'm just like, whoa, okay, that's better.
yeah, I mean, and if I was you, I would just have it all, add that all day.
Yeah, it's great. Like and you can feel it. And then if I don't do it, I'm like, wait, I didn't have my drink. And there's no calories or anything in it. Something else that I remember, like when I first did it, like me, like everybody else, it was all the carbs, and I never really cut carbs out totally, but man, I remember having like this little bit of this withdrawal from the sugars, and because I didn't just do intermittent fasting. At the same time, I really started to cut back on my carbs in general, because I was
Mm,
trying to get rid of just I want to lean up a little more.
okay.
So I remember having some of the fogginess just for a couple of days. I was irritable for a couple of days.
Okay.
Um, Definitely tired, and it was like a detox going on. Maybe it was not just the IF, maybe it was more so the cutting the carbs out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure it was maybe a combination of both. But yeah, I mean, cutting carbs, that's another thing. Ease into that, especially if you're not used to it, right? Carbs help with mineral retention. So when you eliminate carbs, that's when that's when you're not going to abstain. You're not going to get as many minerals in as that way as well. So
What about, I'm just thinking like of what other people might be thinking. I didn't have this problem, but what about like digestive things like just getting gas or bloating or like because you mentioned your gut is changing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it in a positive way, fasting can help um, with gut health, right? Because you're a lot of times, like we mentioned, you're cutting out these foods that are gut stressors and you're also cutting out food additives and things like that. Hopefully, you're eating more protein and things like that. So, the whole carb restriction in eating meat, which has been a big sort of like I should say, it's a big movement now. Those are a lot of the positives. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're having gut issues, I mean, it's like you look at dogs, right? If they eat something or they don't feel good, they just don't eat, and they let their bodies heal. So I think it's important and not such a bad tool to use, especially if you're
So
having
true.
gut issues. Yeah.
That's so true. We just picked up a dog, a second dog from somebody over the weekend, and the dog has barely eaten in almost 3 days.
Mm, mm.
But the dog's totally fine. And I'm like, oh, she's depressed.
Could
Because she
be.
was with another owner for a year and a half, and they were old,
Oh,
elderly,
right.
and they were not well. They couldn't walk her and stuff. So we took the dog. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. Wow, it's interesting to watch. The dog is totally fine and happy, but not eating. And I'm
Mm.
another day or two, the dogs just know inherently. They'll eat when they're ready to eat, you know?
Yeah. Kids are the same way.
Isn't it true? Like eventually, if you're not going to starve yourself, you'll eat.
No. Yeah. Right.
Um, so now let's say somebody hears everything we're saying, like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. So a lot of great benefits. I can expect maybe the first couple of days, maybe I'll feel some side effects, nothing earth shattering. It'll pass. Maybe I'll do it on a Friday, take the day off. I'll be good by like end of day Sunday, because that's probably what it'll kind of come down to, right? Just a few days of adjusting. Then when should they expect to see some of the results that they're looking to see? Like maybe they're doing it for weight loss, maybe they're doing it, like you said, for gut health. But like when should they begin to feel different and be like, oh wow, okay, I know why I'm doing this, and it was a good choice?
Yeah, gosh, it's so individual dependent, but sometimes it could take people a few days, it could take weeks to start feeling, I shouldn't say start feeling right, but maybe to start seeing results. I hate to say, oh, you'll see results in 2 days. It's like I think it just depends on the individual, what they've done in the past, but I think it's all about just being patient and understanding that this is a tool that you can use to help, like we mentioned, with gut health, with maybe having a little bit of more energy, abstaining from a lot of these processed foods that people are eating, especially first thing in the morning. So I think the big thing is just take a big picture approach, and yeah, if you're trying to do this to lose weight in a few days, I guess you could, right? Like it's like the wrestlers, right, who are wrestling, and they're spitting in bowls and trying to lose weight and sweating everything out. Obviously that's not healthy.
That's
So
not real weight loss. I mean, yes, you're
yeah,
losing weight, but it's not, you're not really losing
right.
body fat, like the unhealthy.
You're losing a lot of water weight.
Right.
But I guess my point is take the big picture approach, ease your way into it, and do it more as just a lifestyle change and another tool to just sort of help like optimize your health.
You mentioned lifestyle, right? So is intermittent fasting a diet or is it a lifestyle?
I wouldn't call it a diet, right? Because you can do intermittent fasting with any type of diet. You could do it as a carnivore, someone who's keto. You could do it with a vegetarian, a vegan, a fruitarian, whatever the diet is. So it's not a diet. I would say it's more. I like to say fasting is a tool that can be used. It can be somewhat of a lifestyle change. Like for me, it is a lifestyle change for me. Yes, I've changed my window probably 20 times throughout doing it, but that's just, my own self experimentation. But, yeah, I still do some type of fasting. And so I think it's more of a lifestyle than a diet.
Yeah, I would agree with you because you're not. It's like once
Yeah.
you begin to live that way, um, I mean, again, I speak from experience. It's like, it's just normal. It's not like inside of eating in those windows of time. And some days I'll make it 8 hours. Some days I'll feel like, you know what, I'm gonna do a 6 hour. I just want to give it a little extra. But what I eat when I am eating, that's the actual diet part of it. And it's not a diet in the sense of like I'm on a certain diet to lose weight. Your diet is just what you choose to eat, right? So
Yeah.
if you decide to do intermittent fasting, and in addition, you really want to just add to the health benefits and you cut out sugar, not only is intermittent fasting going to have an impact on your insulin level in a positive way. So if you have issues with like blood sugar, if you have issues that are underlying issues, I mean, isn't it true? You might find that some of your underlying health issues start to improve because you're doing intermittent fasting and maybe adding in just reducing carbs and reducing sugar.
I mean, yeah. And again, you
And that's a lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's a lifestyle. And I think also too, I mean, carbs get a bad name in a lot of things, but if you're eating whole food carbs, that's not so bad, right? So I don't necessarily think you have to restrict carbs, but maybe adjust which carbs you're eating. But yes, you can do a few of these combined, and you can get some great results. And especially if you're coming from the standard American diet, it can really play a role in reversing obviously a lot of like diseases that come on just from lifestyle changes alone.
There's even research out there that I spend way too much time reading and like watching doctors on YouTube talk about like health that indicate that there I'll just say there may be a connection between intermittent fasting and lowering your chance of cancer. And it goes back to that cleansing effect and that time that your body gets to heal on its own. Let me ask you this. We've gone through a lot of the benefits of fasting, right, in the past 35, 40 minutes. Is there anything that we should touch on where we know that there are just myths? There are just things that we hear people saying why it's bad for you, why you shouldn't do it, that just simply aren't true, that we haven't talked about?
Are you talking they're not true?
Like they're myths. They're just like straight up, it's just bad information. Like intermittent fasting is no good for you because it does this, or you shouldn't do that because you need to eat all day long. Like just random weird myths.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of health myths in general out there. I mean, if it just regarding fasting, or I'll just say in general, like we've been told to watch our salt intake, and that's like eating too much salt can lead to high blood pressure. I mean, in general, for most people, they're dehydrated, they're not getting enough electrolytes in. So I think that's something that is just a misnomer and not true. The whole saturated fat is bad for you is a myth. That's outdated research and it's been debunked 1,000 times. And saturated fat is one of those things you want to implement into your life if you're not, because it's great for hormonal health and even cholesterol levels, and just a great way to improve your overall health, and even to cook with. You want to cook with saturated fats. And I don't know, there's a lot of other myths, obviously, but those are a couple that came out that I just thought of in general. But, also too, I think that it's important to weigh the effects of exercise along with the effects of diet when it comes to weight loss, meaning people think they can just go on the elliptical for 45 minutes and they're going to lose weight. And I think they really have to take a strong look at, more other aspects of their lives, not only diet, but sleep, stress, things like that can really take a toll as far as weight loss efforts are concerned.
Okay, I'm going to hit you with a list of things that I think are myths. You just tell me if they're true, or if you think they're true or false. I don't have the right answer. I'm just saying I'll hit you with a myth. You tell me true or false. Ready?
Okay.
And some of these we touched on, but this is almost like a summary. So intermittent fasting means skipping breakfast.
Sure.
True or false?
Yes. True.
Okay. If
it's
you intermittent fast,
yeah,
it's guaranteed you're going to lose weight.
False.
All intermittent fasting is the same. True or false? In other words, like the 16:8, the different time frames.
Is it all the same? I mean, in what context? Like, yes, to some degree, because you are putting boundaries on when you're eating. So I would say yes, it's all that.
I agree with you. I would agree. It is all the same. Just you can do different windows, but you're still doing the same thing. It's all the same. This isn't a test. It's kind of like
just let me know if I pass at the end.
It's good for everybody. Intermittent fasting is good for everybody.
Are you saying that to me? That's false.
Is it a myth?
I don't think it's good for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think there's certain people who shouldn't fast.
For sure, because it straight up could be dangerous to them, for sure.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I'm asking you that. I want to make sure anybody that watches this, if you should check with somebody, if you're going to intermittent fast, you should talk to somebody. You should make sure that you're healthy and that it's a good thing for you, because if you have underlying conditions you don't know about, you could actually make things worse, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there's people who are underweight or, just have eating, maybe some kind of eating. Yeah. Okay.
All right, ready? So if you're intermittent fasting, it pretty much means that when you do eat, you can eat whatever you want. It doesn't matter. True or false?
You can eat whatever you want, but it's not going to, it might be more difficult to fast.
I think, let me give it. So you can eat whatever you want, because I'm intermittent fasting and if I eat 15 donuts and 10 pizzas, it doesn't matter. I'm intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you could do that, right? But I would say that's not optimal.
Right. You probably don't want to do that. It's probably not a good idea. Yeah. These are things that I can imagine people saying. That's why I kind of wrote them down before. Like, I can see somebody saying this.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting actually impairs your mental alertness and it impairs your focus.
Impairs?
Like, it makes it worse.
False.
Totally. Intermittent fasting is going to slow my metabolism down. True or false?
If overdone, it could.
Okay.
If overdone.
So if I'm intermittent fasting, it's okay to overindulge, because I'm intermittent fasting. It's okay.
Guess what does overindulge mean?
I would say with food, eat whatever.
Yeah, I would say it's not okay. If you're overindulging and you're gorging yourself, then we got to look at some other things probably too.
This next one is good. You're supposed to restrict your water intake during your fasting window. Like, you're fasting, you should not drink a lot of water.
Yeah, I would say it's false.
Yeah.
You don't, there's people who do dry fasts, right? But that's not something you want to do, especially starting out, I would say.
Yeah. In fact, if you drink a lot of water, you're probably going to help curb off the hunger, right?
Yeah. Again, make sure, I would say if you're going to drink water, add some minerals, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. Those were the ones I had noted.
Those are good.
I was thinking I'm like, what can people ask that would be like a myth that would just be kind of like, it might seem obvious to me and you, but to the average person who's got no idea about this, they're like, oh, wait.
Right. No, those were good. I like that. That was fun. Yeah.
Good. Listen, I'm here to serve.
No, that was good. That was good.
Let's I think it's a good way to end it, man. This was good. We hit it hard, like some very direct questions, and I think this was great. And I think that anybody who watches this, whether it's when it first comes out or 5 years from now, this was not a show about science. This is a show about practical, like pragmatic, like intermittent fasting thoughts. What is it? What are the benefits? What are some things you should be aware of? What are some myths? Yeah. And I think that this leads us to a good spot, which is if somebody wants to reach you because you're coaching, you really know how to take people through getting started and how to intermittent fast and more. How can they reach you?
Yeah, so if they go to my website, briangryn.com, and they can if you click on a button like let's chat or whatever, that you'll see there's some buttons that just reach out to me. They can email me, brian@briangryn.com. Those are the easiest ways to reach out to me. And I do weekly blogs, and I got a book coming out. So, it's good stuff.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Everything you just said is going to be found down below in the description. So
perfect.
All the different ways that somebody can reach you, or if you want to reach Brian, it'll be down below. Definitely check out his social media, his book, his blog. And there's a lot of good information that comes out on a regular basis. And it's all about informing and educating and sharing good information, motivating you and inspiring you to make a healthy change in your life. And this is just a tool. And just one more thing about a tool. This tool I was showing you is called Fast Tick.
Okay.
It's free. I
Cool.
use it. Not everybody knows about it. There's so many free tools, but sometimes I find that it's easier to have a tool that helps me track what I'm doing and keep me
keeps you accountable a little bit.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And you get to see like enough days in a row, like you hit the goal. It feels good. It's like checking off a box on the checklist, you know? It feels good.
Exactly.
Listen, man, I had a great time speaking with you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
I think that there might be part 2 to this when your book comes out. When's your book coming out?
That would be great. A couple months. It's been should have been out already, but it'll be out in a couple months. And I would love that. That'd be fun.
And I think that the topic of, specifically that niche, like men over 40, that's an interesting topic. And we didn't touch on it today because I want to save it for another conversation. It is a whole other show.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people out there that probably benefit from knowing, like, okay, I'm over 40, I'm a guy, things are changing.
Right. And you know what? The basis around the book is that, so it'll be a perfect topic for it.
You're probably an expert on being a man, right? And talking to a guy. If there's anything even down the road that you want to throw in, for women too, that might be helpful, that'd be great. But
sure,
you're not an expert on being a woman. I get it.
No, that's for sure. Right now.
Or being a woman over 40. That's so.
Yeah.
Listen. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
At the end of every show, I have the good fortune of being able to remind everybody, based on my guests and the experience, to be humble and do the work. You want to reach your potential, and nobody's going to do it for you. You've got to do the work. You got to be humble, and you got to hustle. Today's show, I think, was another example of that mindset. If you're going to intermittent fast, make the decision, set your goals. You got to do the work. And in this case, you got to do the work. And the work isn't so much physical. It's more so just being in the right mindset and knowing that you're doing the right thing for a good reason. So with that, Brian, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. That was great.